Jay and Jess here from North America, me from Canada, so I'm going to do a Canadian accent. No, that's not Canadian. Mm. And Jay from Texas. Let's hear the
I
twang.
think, and I think you should do a Texas accent. Actually, I am from Oklahoma, so I guess if you just say down south, that may
Down
be
south.
all encompassing. Hmm.
Even just that noise is just for Canadians. We like idolize Americans and hate them at the same time, right? Because that's
Uh-huh,
human.
uh-huh,
Other
uh-huh.
that accent, we speak so boringly. We think, we sound like New Yorkers, nothing special. But you guys, you got like feeling in the accent. So
You just
I don't
sound
know.
regular. You just, and
Regular.
then if you add in, yeah, just regular. So if you add in the black from the hood dialect, which is me, and I'm
Is it?
speaking for myself. So I know we're going to be talking about racism and all that, and I'm not representing the whole world. Okay. So you will hear me embrace my blackness a lot, which I think a lot of black folk will probably also be able to ascribe to. But anyway, back to back in the hood, you add that dialect, you
That
know.
so you're allowed to say I'm from the hood and I talk like this, and I'm
Mhm.
not allowed to say that. And I
That's
understand that. Or what do you
yeah,
have? Yeah, and,
that's
and
interesting.
right.
Go ahead, Jess. Go ahead.
No, because I'm so thrilled that you push me out of my not that you push me, that I jump it out of the comfort zone because I don't want to be an ass anymore. And I
Mhm,
have been
mhm.
an unconscious, biased, unaware Canadian just walking through the world not knowing my own privilege until recently. And and this needs to change. And so I
Mhm.
want to learn from you with your directness, right? How we who are a little bit concerned. Oh, Scott Rencher's
Mhm.
here. He's a little bit concerned.
Hey, Scott. Hey, big brother. Big little brother. A little big brother. Anyway, that's
Wait,
an
he's
inside
older.
joke. Go
He's
ahead.
older.
Yeah, we
He's
had that whole conversation. He'll know what I'm talking about.
older. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Like we got to shift. And I'm doing a conference in
Mhm.
Barcelona, October 25th, 27th. It's far away for you Americans, but the Europeans can be there. And it's about shifting how we, as facilitators, as mental health workers, people who work with change, how we can
Yeah.
change the way we treat people. Because if we don't change it, that dude in the restaurant being all racist is not going to change it. It's like we got to start and we got to look at ourselves and be like, oh, that was
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
so
yeah.
help
I
me out.
love yes. So let me jump right in because I know we only got 20 minutes to save the world. So I know, right? I belong to this group called Therapist DAO. It is a decentralized autonomous organization. So a long-winded way of saying nobody is in charge. We're all in charge. And it's a group of therapists with a couple of honorary therapists, but it was actually developed by two white people to address a lot of things. But one of the main major tenets is anti-racism and just head on dealing with microaggressions, not just in the therapy space, but in the world, right? But it definitely starts in the therapy space.
Hmm.
And so I let them know, and hopefully some of them are on. Hey, Danielle, and maybe Mike. I let them know. I said, hey, I'm going to be talking about this because we have spent the last year of talking about anti racism. How does it show up? What does it really mean? And a couple of the white folks in the group chimed in because I said, hey, we're going to be talking about how not to be an ass when it comes to racism, right? And they were like, great, here's my take. Here's my take. So this is straight from other white people who have been doing their own work
Hmm.
collectively and individually. And so Mike said, one of the things he said, and I'm looking at my notes over here, he said, practicing impoliteness. Right. So, like when you're in these spaces where you're with maybe family and it's at a Thanksgiving gathering and nobody, you know how to shy away from politics and you know how to shy away from certain things, but something is said, or maybe even just head on being direct in those spaces with other white people,
Hmm.
not in front of Black people,
Uh-huh.
And I'm speaking for, I said I'm not speaking for Black people, but we're talking about racism today, right? So,
Yeah.
not related to, I just want to impress all my Black friends, but like literally calling it out. So practicing, not being too polite, especially
Yeah.
when these things come up. And then Naomi, who's also another white individual in the room, I see you're thinking, I want to add something onto that. She said practicing maybe even irreverence, like, and so the way I look at those two, I know I told her to give me the fifth grade version, and I
What's
don't
that
know.
word?
I had to look it up too, Jess, because I didn't want anybody judging me on my Blackness, right? Like I don't know what the word irreverence means. Um, but the way I look at those two is maybe even playfully calling your white counterpart out,
Mhm.
um, while at the same time letting them know it's not okay. Whatever was said, whatever was done, their behavior is not okay. And so those were some habits. And then Ryan shared, not being shamed into being frozen when it comes to addressing these things. So I don't know if any of those
Yeah, I
are
just had a
relatable to you.
I don't know if we were in at the AQAI summit where Scott's calling in from. Well, not at the summit because that's in Mexico, and it would be a
Yeah.
long time at that resort, Scott. I hope you're not there. And
And
we
that's
were,
where you and I met and connected.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
the dinner table, and someone told
Yeah.
us. I'm sure it was you. You know what happens to young people, Jay? They
Yeah.
talk like their friend said something, but it's actually just a stranger on social media, and they start to call those
Mhm.
people friends. So I was just going to do that.
Mhm.
So I saw on
Yeah.
Instagram the story of a woman being a black woman at a like a gala dinner, and the people at the table asked her if she was a waitress while she was in her gala dress at the dinner table
Mhm.
with her tag on it, like just unbelievable. And no one at the table said anything, and she left that table being like, "What?" It, and it's that kind of situation. It's like these are maybe high society people. You don't want to offend these people, but you're like, everyone all these
Yeah.
people at the table would have been like, "What the f?" Like that is so not
Mhm.
cool. And I in this conversation, it was a conversation with real people. It wasn't online. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I was just like, I would just say like, so uncool. Like almost, I just wanted to like
Mhm.
express what's happening in my body,
Yeah.
what that person said,
Yeah.
and then invite that person to move to another table.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know the right things to say either because we have
Yeah.
movies. We don't know how to do it because no white person.
Mhm.
This is how you treat people with respect.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. No. So one of the things that Naomi said in reference to that was learning how does she coin the term? Learning how to call it out with maybe even a phrase, like practicing a phrase like, whoa, what just happened there? And then being able to invite that conversation. So my black coin version for that, which is not mine, but it's of the black culture, which is, oh no, they didn't. Oh no, she didn't just treat you like that, right? Like you didn't have to sound black. Whatever in your comfortable white skin and body, as Danielle always says, in your white body, how can you call that out? Knowing that when we're talking about not being an ass, right? When we're talking about not whether it's passive or aggressive, recognizing microaggressions when they happen, because that was a microaggression. It's like, why of all the people in the room did you treat this person that way? And microaggressions tend to be able to be explained away and dismissed. That's why when you did the write up and you mentioned the friend that said it's all in, black people's head, that in and of itself was a straight up microaggression, right? It's like, how can you as a white person tell me what I feel in
yeah.
certain moments? So going back to the person at the table, yeah, being able to, when you know it, Jess, but for you being in that space, knowing that one of the tenets of white supremacy culture, as we study in the Dow, is fear of conflict. And
Mm,
this idea, I think I shared it with you a couple of days ago when we talked, this idea of I need to be comfortable. And so
mm,
if I'm uncomfortable, then that must mean that it's not right. And so
mhm,
when you're dealing with racism and when you're being an anti-racist on purpose, it
mhm.
is, at least for me and my black skin, I have to do that all the time. But I tell my white counterparts, thank you, because you get a choice. You can remain,
Mm,
comfortable. Should
mm,
you? No. but could you? Absolutely. And so recognizing that being an anti-racist, not racist, anti,
Mhm.
um, requires you to be uncomfortable almost all of the time because racism is around us all of the time. Whether you're around Black people, whether you're around some other, person of color, whether
Mhm.
you're internalizing it, whether you are doing it in your own interpersonal,
Yeah.
relationships, it's around us, whether it's institutionalized, whether it's a part of a system, all of that.
So, so this conference that we're running is about shifting, and we are
Yes.
shifting and starting off. We're starting with the party because I noticed that after the gala dinners of like the conferences I go to, the Sunday morning, everybody's friends because they
Yeah.
connected over something
Mhm.
that has no race or religion. It has
Yeah.
preferences. Dancing,
Yeah.
smiling, this enjoyment
Yes.
of bodies and humans just being in the
Yeah.
moment. And so we're starting with
Very
that.
universal.
And as a facilitator and in the mental health field as well that I work in, like you do and your colleagues,
Mhm.
as facilitators, we know, I ask this question a lot. I ask the room, hey, in your culture, because
Mhm.
of course we work in different cultures, I say, in your culture, is it
Mhm.
always the loudest person who gets to speak the most? And everyone except for the
Yeah.
Asians agree. The Asians, the person with the most respect gets to speak first, the person with the most experience. Yes, they have other problems, but
Mhm.
they don't have that problem. But for the rest of us that grew up west of Asia and south of Asia,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
loudest person. And
Yeah.
us loud people, we don't realize our
Mhm.
privilege of having the white privilege, the loud privilege, the extroverted privilege,
Mhm.
Jackman's privilege,
Yeah.
maybe the privilege of being in that space and actually having a seat at that table, the qualifications,
Mhm.
the time, if you have enough LinkedIn contacts, you're invited to a conference.
Yeah.
If you don't have that privilege of having the time to dedicate yourself to
Mhm.
personal branding, you're never invited to get your voice heard. And
Yeah.
me, until a couple of years ago, was
Mhm.
like, well, I worked hard to get here. Like, no, I didn't. It was handed to me. So how do you,
Mhm. Mhm.
without a lot of therapy, like me,
Yeah.
how do we convince us who are so freaking blind and not evil but
Yeah.
unconscious? How do we help? How do we how
Yeah.
do we stop that?
Yeah, I think it definitely starts with you. And I'm going to use an AQAI term that we learned. Thank you to Scott and the AQAI team, unlearning, right? Having that idea ingrained in your mind that what you know probably needs to be changed. There are some unlearning habits, right? So maybe unlearning how to be comfortable, unlearning how to not say things and even ingrain or internalize and feel things like, hey, I never thought about your color. I never thought that you were a Black person. I just see you as a person. That we're not eradicating racism that way, right? But being able to recognize, I love that you even bring up the whole, we're going to start with the dancing, and dancing is universal. I don't know if you even remember this, Jess. But wait, do you prefer Jess or Jessica? I've just been calling you Jess.
I like gesture.
Okay. Okay, because in Black culture, we love nicknames. Not everybody, but most of us love nicknames. So I may call you Jessie Jess. I may call you JJ just because, I may call you Jay. Anyway, but I digress. So I don't even know if you remember this, but you remember I think it was like the last night at the summit. Of course, I was the only black woman there. I was the only Black person there. And I remember, and this was after you and I had the conversation. I remember you coming up to me because you guys were jamming and y'all were dancing and singing, and there was a lot of alcohol involved
Oh,
as well.
karaoke.
And so that. Yeah, and so karaoke was going on, and I was in the corner. I was doing my little thing, and I remember you coming over to me, and you said, "Hey, Jay, this must be a very white thing, huh? White people dancing together." And I didn't even remember what I said to you, but what I loved about you in that moment and what I loved about you at the dinner table was you straight up asked, "What's going on? What's your deal?" Kind of how you embrace me in your own way. But even after we had our conversation with Nancy and Scott and you, and we were very open, you all had no idea how much that allowed me to just decompress because there were some things that had happened that I was uncomfortable on the plane going to, right? Because already knew what I was going to face at that moment and at that time. But that conversation and the fact that you walked up to me and just called it out
Hmm.
immediately, like, is this a very white thing? Is this what white people do?
Like, do we
Because that is, yeah, yeah, because that in and of itself is not racist. Yes, yes, yes. That wasn't racist. That wasn't, we're better than you and in your culture, which is what racism is, right? It was legit. Hey, tell me, how do you all do it? As a Black American, what do you see in your spaces? And
Yeah.
I don't know if I even told you, but what you will find in Black spaces in dancing is the wobble, the Cupid
Oh,
shuffle, the electric slide. No, not that wobble, but that will wobble while you wobbling, right? And so, but even just to be able to have you embrace that, because I can imagine that that wasn't comfortable for you because you didn't know how I was going to respond.
yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think because I'm so curious about it, any mistakes I make, I think
Yeah,
are not for maybe they are forgivable because it's the
yeah,
intention of people. Like I can say, "You're talking Black," and I think you forgive me for that
yeah,
because I'm just
yeah.
copying your accent for a second here for fun. But if I
Right.
say it with a different tone, completely different. So it's like these
Mhm,
microaggressions that you're feeling
mhm,
that no white person can perceive. I don't even know what it looks like. Like
mhm,
I don't even know how many
mhm.
times I've done it. When I was like
Yeah,
probably in India
yeah,
or in Egypt,
yeah.
when I was like when I just did it, I saw something I didn't like.
Mhm,
I looked at someone in their face and I made that face. That was a microaggression,
yeah,
100%. I'm guilty of it.
yeah,
I don't even know when we're doing it, right? So it's like you can feel when someone's looking at you. You can feel when someone's
yeah,
attracted to you. You can feel when you have a connection with someone. You can feel when
mhm,
someone is racist. I'm
yeah,
not saying
yeah,
that you know that, but I'm just
yeah.
saying, how can we say that we don't
Actually,
believe?
you can. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is such a fine line between, we built a relationship, so there are certain things that you can say to me, and there are certain things that I can in turn maybe say back as a gentle form of a correction, like, you may not want to say this, you may not want to say um colored, you may want to say person of color, because
Okay.
color has a negative connotation when it ties to slavery and when it ties to Jim Crow laws and things like that in America, right? But you and I have a relationship, so I can say certain things to you about that. I will. I don't know how much time we have. I want to share this one anecdote. Are we
Yeah.
good? At least I got a couple of minutes.
I
Okay.
I think we'll go a little
So
bit.
okay, all right, all right.
Alright.
Because this is an important topic. But I have a friend. Her name is Stephanie. She is not watching because she doesn't even know I'm doing this.
Mm.
But Stephanie and I work together in the school district, and Stephanie is white. Obviously, I'm black, and so we were able to really connect on a friendship level, and I consider her my sister friend, if you will. Anyway, Stephanie, in the activity that we were doing and working with some of our students, a couple of things that she would notice about me. Number one, because we would take our kids and they were almost adult age kids, 17, 18, 19. We would take them on what we would call a um, um, a 3-day series, right? And so we would feed them, we would teach them, all that kind of stuff. So when it came time to have lunch, I'm the one standing with the hand sanitizer. Nope, you didn't wash your hands. I'm spraying. You see that look? I'm spraying your hands because Miss J, I washed my hands, before we got here. No, you didn't picked up a pencil. You need to wash your hands, right? And so she would tease me about that. She would say, "You were always the one." And I would say to her, "Black people don't play about germs. We're going to wash our hands. We're going to," I am stereotyping all Black people because there are some nasty Black folk. They're just nasty folk, period, right? But this is some of the things that, like, a lot of Black people, you're gonna find sanitizer close by, and this was way before COVID because that's what we do.
Oh, yeah?
Another thing that she called me, yeah, another thing she called me out on, Jess, we were having a lunch and I got up and, to go to the bathroom, maybe to even wash my hands. And so I had set my plate down and I had took a napkin and I had covered my plate, right? And I
Yeah.
do that all the time. And
Oh,
so during the series, one of the locations we went to, I was the only Black facilitator. Liz was Hispanic, and then we had Stephanie, who's white, and then we had Anna, who's also white. And so we were very open typically about these kind of things. But anyway, so we went to do this activity, and one of the persons there that worked with the help facilitate, but was specific to that location, was also Black. And so apparently she must have got up and she must have covered her food. She came back, and so we were at the table, and Stephanie looked at us and she said, "I noticed both of you all cover your food. Is that a Black thing?" She was genuinely curious
Yeah.
because she noticed two people that she called friends and colleagues that she respected, and it was no shade. There was no racism in it. And we had to explain to her, why Black people cover their food. We don't like flies. We don't, we don't do certain things. And again, it is a generalization, right? And so, of course, what do I do? Because I'm all about data. I go on Facebook and I do a Facebook poll. Hey, I'm doing a poll. Black people, tell me, do you cover your food? And we kind of had some fun with that.
Yeah.
But to your point, circling back to when is it comfortable and when is it not, I think you have to look at the relationship that you have with that individual. And if you feel like you're going to sound racist, just call that shit out. You know
Hmm.
what? Look, oh, can I cuss on here? I'm sorry. Anyway,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry for swearing.
No.
But call it out. Say, you know what? Respectfully, I'm saying this respectfully, but you sound like you talk like a Black person from the South. Where are you from? I mean, if you have a relationship
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
with that individual, then it should be okay. So I don't know if that kind of answers what you were referring to.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it because it's we notice tendencies, right? And so
Mhm.
Indian women, a lot of Indian women do this, and I'm like, okay, that must be a cultural thing. Is that a cultural thing, or is that like the continent of India? Hold on, is it a continent?
Yeah,
Country of India. And so, if I can just say, "Hey, I noticed you did that. Where'd that come from?"
yeah,
That's also
yeah.
a simple way. Okay, I have a
Mhm.
question that popped in my head. I don't want to forget it. When you go to a conference, when you go to an event, and you see the poster, and there are no colored people, there are no people.
Mhm.
So, I'll correct myself. There are no people of color on it. Do you?
Good, Jess, you caught yourself.
Yeah, it's just subconscious, right? Bad,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Do you? Do you feel like I don't belong there because there's no representation of me? Or is
Mhm.
that too conscious of it? Or is there like a huge subconscious thing about that?
No, no, that's super conscious.
Super
When
conscious.
I ended up with AQAI, and I may have told you the story. I had Mike was the one who I spoke with, who kind of onboarded me, right? One of the
Mhm.
first things I asked him was, I noticed in your videos, I noticed in your write-ups, there are no Black Americans, there's no people of color. And
Yeah.
he heard me, and what he did was provided me with some information of maybe some other AQAI members that were Black individuals. And I never connected with them directly, just largely because such an introvert. And so, but I appreciated that he heard me. I also
Mm.
appreciated that at the end of the summit, when everybody was hugging, he looked at me. He said, "I know this. I'm glad you leaned into it. I know this was tough for you."
Oh.
He didn't say anything to me, as I was almost going to make me cry. He didn't say anything to me during the time, but the fact that he noticed it at that moment was
Mm.
important. But to your question, just about do I notice it? Yes, it's so super subconscious, and it's also what is also super not subconscious, conscious was also right at the forefront. It's this idea that individuals that don't understand will say I'm making it up.
Mm.
Will say I'm just being, you
Sensitive.
know, too hyper. Matter of fact, one of my managers in the school district, when Trayvon Martin happened, and we were talking about that, and I was sharing with her that she was my manager, and I was sharing with her that I, as a Black female in America, would have to work twice as hard to get where she was because I had more credentials than she did. I didn't want her job, but we were just talking about that. And in that conversation, Trayvon Martin came up, and she talked about how maybe she would fear if three white guys were walking down the street in hoodies, and how she would be concerned. One of the terms that she used that she doesn't realize was a microaggression and laced in racism was, of course, she was white, was when I was telling her, kind of being in black skin in America, she was like, goodness, she's like, but that has to be exhausting to be so hyper vigilant all the time.
Hmm.
It didn't come from a place of you saying, dang, Jay, I didn't recognize, like some of the stories I shared with you when, we had our sidebar a couple of days ago. And you were like, man, I had no idea these things were going on. It wasn't from that place. It was from the place of, aren't you maybe doing a little too much, always being hyper vigilant?
Oh.
Um,
Huh.
And so I didn't have, even though I had what I thought was a fair relationship with her, I didn't have the type of relationship, nor did I have the competency and the developed skill set of unlearning and of mental flexibility and of some of the things that I've, learned over the years, because this was years ago, to say to her, that was kind of microaggressive, or, wait, what? What are you
Hmm.
saying? Why is it hypervigilant happen to be Black in America and not fear for my life when I'm sleeping in my bed? Because or boiling a pot of water, as in the case of Sonia Macy, who I shared with you the other day, um, being shot in the face by the police. So,
Hmm.
I don't know where I was going with that, but
I,
I think I hit a point.
I loved it, and thank you for sharing how you feel when those things happen, and your honesty in saying like, ouch, and how we don't even know that we're doing it and that we're being
Yeah,
asses. It's like
yeah,
most asses and most idiots don't realize they're doing it, because if they did, they
mhm,
probably wouldn't do it, because people like to be liked. We want to be popular, right?
yeah,
Nobody wants to be
yeah,
hated. So it's like there's something blocking those people. Hate,
yeah,
fear, hate and
yeah,
fear, of course, are the
yeah,
biggest obstacles to
yeah.
overcoming any kind of peace in
And
humanity.
and let's be honest. Let's be honest, Jess. Privilege allows you to be comfortable and still get the benefit. Like, I have to be uncomfortable to get even a little bit of the benefit that you enjoy as a white person. That is what it is, and I'm okay with it, and it makes me the wonderful Black girl person that I am, with wonderful Black girl magic. But at the end of the day, and I don't want you to feel shame about that. I just want us to recognize it in that moment, right?
Okay, so this brings up the topic where I had that little fight that I mentioned, where someone I care about a lot, some white man, said they're oversensitive. They're just imagining, most of them. And I'm like, oh my God, what do you know? It's like, you have no, my partner is half Nigerian, and I've dated more black and brown guys than ever white ones. And
Mhm,
we used to get rocks thrown at us when I lived in Egypt, when I was walking with my
mhm,
African friends, right? I got hit by a car when I was walking with an African guy in Egypt. And it's like, and I was very young at that time. And I came from small town white Canada. And I was like, people hate black people. And I was just like, I was like, how, why? Like, and I had to, like, it took me 15, 20 years to figure that out, that I possibly
mhm,
also not, I don't,
mhm,
I can't even say this out loud, right? Like, did I also think like those people, but I was unconscious about it?
mhm,
Or what was put in my head
mhm.
that needs to be shifted, and it's a very painful
Yeah,
process, and there's so much
yeah.
shame and guilt. Blah, blah, blah. This is not therapy for me. But where was I
But
going
it's
with this?
kind of therapeutic, though. It really
It
is kind of therapeutic.
it is, because we have to take these thoughts. I'm so passionate about this. We have to take these thoughts, because
Mhm,
I'm German. I was taught that I'm better than everyone. Like, literally,
mm,
I was taught that,
mhm,
not 100%
mhm.
in words, but in everything, by
Yeah.
well-intentioned, rather
Mhm,
kind, extremely generous,
mhm,
really not racist parents. But
mhm,
there's like the spectrum
mhm,
of like racist,
mhm,
and the spectrum of being like, you think you're better than everyone. There,
mhm,
and so
mhm. Yeah.
this guy who said this to me, um, I thought I couldn't even have a conversation with him. And this, I want to know if this is how you feel, because our premise of understanding of the problem is not the same. I think the system
Mhm,
is racist and classist and run
mhm,
to keep the powerful in power. And he
mhm.
was even denying that the media portrays Black people as less than. And I was like, I don't even know how I can have a discussion with you if we don't even have the same base belief or vision of what world we're living in. So I just walked away angry and he walked away angry. So we're not going to have a conversation. Neither of us are going to shift. How do we do
Yeah.
that with not walking away in anger?
Which
Like
is
how?
so interesting because, yeah, because I think what it boils down to is what are your personal values, right? Like, if it, and what influence do I have over you as a just as a friend? Like, yeah, we don't have to. Racism, let me be clear. Racism is not something we can agree to disagree on. Like, let's be honest. Like, if you are walking around thinking you better than somebody because of their skin color, and you're not dealing with how you are internalizing that and how much of an ass you're being by saying in your mind that, oh, that person is Black, so I must be smarter than them, or I went to Yale, so I must be smarter,
Mm,
or they're from the hood of Tulsa, Oklahoma, they must not have had a good school system, these types of things. Like, if you're not willing to own
mm,
that racism is a deal breaker,
yeah.
at least for me, in my Black skin, I probably don't. And that's not just for Black white people, that's for some
Mm,
Black people too that have
uh,
internalized this racism into thinking that, oh no, white people are telling us we made it up. And so we're really making it up. Like, they don't say that, but that's basically what it is. No, my white friends treat me equal,
mm,
so
mm.
therefore there's no racism. So when it comes to your question about how do I deal, I think that, like, how much of a deal breaker is racism for you? That's the question you have to ask for yourself, right? Like, what other values does this person have? And they could outweigh the racism, but if they do outweigh the racism, then I would hope one of those values would be that that individual thinks enough of you to
Mm,
maybe hear
mm.
how that exact thing that they said was in and of itself racist and microaggression.
See, so I love that. And it seems like quite like I realize the expression black and white. It's like the two extremes. It's like you're racist, you're out of my life, right? And this human is one of the best humans I've ever met. Like, I adore this human. And I think it's a case of white privilege unconscious, living in a very privileged lifestyle until you leave that bubble and you go somewhere, or
Yeah,
until you suffer, you don't know what it feels like to suffer.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you're not a bad person, but when shit hits the fan and all the
Mhm,
immigrants are taking our jobs, yeah, then then
mhm.
your real colors come out. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's why
yeah.
there's
And if you're
there's
talking, in talking points, right? Like, we need to secure the border because, immigrants are taking our jobs, or, Black people are lazy, or whatever points, talking points you're talking, to me, that sounds like you have been conditioned to think in a certain way. And if particularly your friend, because you said that, you classify them as somebody that you really did care about, thinking about their because racism is on a spectrum. I love how Robin DiAngelo in her book White Fragility, she talks about that. She says it's not binary. It really is on a spectrum. And she says for herself, she almost has to deal with her. It's always at the forefront for her daily because she recognizes it. And I would probably venture to say maybe the same for you. And so, maybe not give up on your friend, but having that honest conversation of, here are some things that maybe you didn't know about microaggressions, maybe you didn't know about white privilege. It's okay if you don't ascribe. It's not okay if you don't ascribe to it, because you get the benefit of it. But if in any way you feel like you can shine some light on how they see the thing and they're
mm,
worth it, then don't throw that friendship away. We had a situation in the Dow where we had to legit kind of go through a process of recognizing if someone could hear the feedback.
Yeah.
There's some microaggressions that are going on, and one of the things that my sister and friend, who's one of the few Black people in the Dow, said, I don't like throwing bodies away, and so we did everything that we could to try to make it amenable for that person to have some change and to have a mindset change. Right? There's an AQI term, that mental flexibility, being able to see it, in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, but it just didn't work out, and it was a hard call for us. We felt very guilty that we couldn't embrace that person even still yet. So you go through a moment of grief when you have to say goodbye to someone who doesn't who doesn't ascribe to a very fundamental value for you. For me, being anti-racist is a fundamental value,
Mm-hmm.
on whatever spectrum you are with that. But you can't be racist and be my friend, and
No.
not just because I'm Black.
Hmm.
If that makes
Mm.
sense. Like I'm not gonna be your token Black friend.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not. But I'm not. I hate to say, but yeah, and my spirit of discernment is strong, so I can weed it out. But I don't want to be a token Black friend. I don't want to be a token Black anything.
You want to be a friend. Punto. No? So
Yeah.
there's a guy named Rory from South Africa. He's in the AQAI, and we're talking
Hey,
tomorrow.
Rory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I told him what we spoke about 2 days ago, and we're going to talk more about that because he worked in diversity and inclusion. And this maybe could be one of our last kind of tangents on this topic,
We've been on
because
several. Yeah.
he was saying in South Africa when he was working in HR with the government, they were putting qualified Black women in positions of leadership, but they didn't have the experience of their competition, let's say, for those roles, because they didn't have the membership to that golf club where all those dudes used to hang out and learn from each other about
Mhm.
real life experience, not just book smarts, right? And
Yeah.
so, of course, those white dudes are like, but I'm more qualified. I don't know how South Africans talk, right? Right? It,
Mhm.
and so the question is, it's like, you were put there because there should be opportunities. But being direct about that is so uncomfortable. And yet it's not going to work out. She's going to get fired in 2 years if she doesn't get those skills. So his solution when he was working with the government of South Africa was skills training, mentorship. Like, let's get you caught up so that you can have the opportunities that other people have with it. And I just wonder, is that like a really practical, cool thing that you think you have to confront it head on, being like, or
Mhm.
is it too
Mhm.
direct, or do you think that's one of the solutions to this hiring for DEI, even though the person hasn't had the exact same privileges, perhaps is the word?
Yeah. Yeah. Can they do the job, right? Like,
Okay.
can we unlearn this idea that because you have more experience, then you should get the job? Like,
Okay.
number one, we should be able to, in my opinion, because one of the things that Nancy was saying that I really took away from the AQAI was, I think it was Nancy, that it's not but, it's and. Maybe it's you. It's not but, it's and.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Yes, and yes, thank you. Yes, and so why can't it be that, maybe we hire this person, but increase a FTE, a full-time employee, and
mm,
create a space for this person? Why not
mm,
do a mentorship program? Why does it have to be either or? I think
mm,
we have been ingrained to be naturally competitive,
mm,
and what that means is, if I'm better than you are, then I should be the first.
yeah,
But
mm,
better, it can be looked at in all different ways, right? Like, number one, you may be better, but you may have more experience, but you may not be the best fit.
okay, get this story. There's like a guy on Facebook. I'm in the professional speaking world, and it's full of 6-year-old white dudes, right, with the same message. I climbed Mount Everest when I was 25 years old, and I'm going to talk about that for 30 more years. And those people, those young, like it's so old school, it drives me insane. So I
Mhm.
made a comment. It's passive aggressive. I'm not even sure if I think it was just aggressive. I said, what a poster. It was like a poster of leaders, and it was
Mhm.
9 white dudes and 2 women kind of in the bottom corner. Right.
Mhm.
So there were some women on that, but no one of any color, and all just
Mhm.
like they're just white 50-year-old middle class people. If I can judge by their, well, I don't know if I'm not even going to say that. Okay, we know the posters,
But
right?
let's be real. Yeah, if they were speakers, they are middle, upper middle,
You gotta
upper
spend money.
class.
So I make a
Mhm.
comment, and I thought I would get like attacked for it, and I was just like in a bad mood or in an angry mood that day, and I go, "What a poster of OWG, like old white guy, right?"
Guys.
And he didn't even know what the term meant. He wrote me
Uh-huh.
back being like, "Why, thank you. You should join our next retreat." I was like, dude, I'm being passive aggressive about how you have no diversity and like no relevance, and you don't even know what people are calling you behind your back, right?
How about
So
not thinking that, which is also a white supremacy culture trait, thinking that you know everything. Why not just ask, what does OWG mean? Like, what
uh,
could he have made that up? Like,
mm, mm. Must have thought it was like wow, but spelt with a G, with
I guess,
dyslexia.
like you didn't know. Yeah, like, yeah, yeah. Instead of OMG, it was OWG, and
He
and
probably
he
put
just
that.
assumed, yeah, he just assumed that you had a typo because you're a woman.
Yeah, it's just it's just insane. Yeah. Oh, and so this happens all the time too, and it's like I don't even know how to fight it because in the speaking world, you get recommended from your colleagues. Okay,
Mhm,
but if you're not in the in crowd and you
mhm,
weren't able to go to that conference, and you might not financially be able to have gone to that group of people or have the privilege
yeah,
of being even invited to that area, or you don't have the special on that, or you don't speak with the accent that they like to be associated with, you will not be invited on that stage. And then they say, well, we gave the role to the best person who, like I'm not make, of course, this happens in every
mhm,
position, but it's like it's on stage. There's such a lack of diversity because only one person of color came to our conference out of 20.
yeah,
At my
yeah,
conference, no one of color is coming
mhm,
so far out of
mhm,
20 of us.
mhm. Yeah,
And that's my fault because I surround myself with people who look and act like me because I want to be comfortable and I
yeah,
don't want to deal with the and I'm sorry.
mhm,
It's difficult for cultures to
mhm,
think to go like, why'd you do that? Like you just don't have time. I only have 2, 3 friends. They're white 40-year-old women just like me with a Christian background who look and talk and do
mhm.
everything just like me. So I don't even have to think about spending time with them.
Yeah,
And then I fell in love with this half black guy. And I'm like,
mhm,
what the F are you doing? What is
yeah,
that? Is that because of
mhm,
your race? Is that your culture? Is that
mhm,
you? Like, why are you an
mhm.
idiot? Like
Yeah, yeah,
exhausting to try and understand all the differences for my brain. It's just easier to put people in boxes and then know how to deal with them. So,
yeah,
how are we going to, unless we choose to be uncomfortable, how are we ever going to increase diversity if individuals
yeah.
like me or well intentioned don't even put in a lot of effort? I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything you said, you can multiply at times every day for Black people. From the perspective of having to deal with race always
Yeah.
in your face.
Oh,
At least most Black people I know, we have to deal with it in that regard. So the thing that because I hear you and we've talked about this and I feel your passion. And what we tell our clients, right, is how can you practice your own self-care too? Like owning it and it being so ingrained and you're constantly being introspective. And I think that is a occupational hazard for us as well to always internalize,
mm,
and try to make change um, in some form or fashion, but recognizing that, sometimes even though it's right there all the time for many people, that it's not your responsibility to fix everything about your conditioning. And that some of it is going to be fixed just by living enough life and then by being intentional, right? So like you have three white friends that are like you. I think a form of anti-racism is to intentionally embrace others of color, people of color, and not
Mhm.
just to say I got black friends, but to be able to say I need to, because one of the I heard my pastor say this years ago. One of the steps to turning your mindset and turning around is exposure. And in order to be exposed to different cultures and be exposed to different people and be exposed to different um, ethnic groups, and not just from the sake of saying, well, I did it, that was good, but no, like, I don't know, find, find a conference that's, is largely black,
Yeah.
and or more diverse and dive into that. Um,
You know,
yeah,
it
and
doesn't
so
even
just
pop
being
into my radar. And that's what the Google, what is that phenomena called? No black conferences pop into my feed because
yeah,
it's not in my world, right? And now
yeah.
that I went to Nigeria and I was the only white person out of 400 ECOWAS West Africans. Yeah. And it
Mhm.
was like one of the most amazing experiences of my
Yeah,
life. It was so fantastic. But that doesn't come if I don't seek it. And so
yeah.
to all of us facilitators and trainers, we're
Mhm.
we may be good people, but it's not enough because there's these
Yeah.
unconscious biases in us. We need to consciously call out the behavior, consciously
Mhm.
set up habits for our facilitation that allow for the less, if we can just say it that way, the less privileged, and
Yeah,
to have the space to invite seats at the table. We can't just keep doing it how we've been doing it for 50, 60 years. It's
absolutely. Yeah.
unacceptable, right? And we
Yeah.
all have to stay with ourselves. So this is part.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. When at the AQAI summit, when Nancy made the comment about her doing work with diversity, equity, inclusion, I made a
yes.
beeline to her. She wasn't even off the stage quickly, and that's how I think we ended up having that. Not I think I know we ended up having that very open conversation at the dinner table. You just happened to sit there, but I think she intentionally came over to me. She said, I want to have dinner with you because I want to learn more about, at the time, it was a very infant stage. We were at very infant stages of therapist Dow. And so she was like, I want to know more. And then Scott sat next to her, and then Scott opened up about his work in, I think, cultural competence or
Mm.
some cultural specialty or something, and it created a whole conversation. But when she said that, it was almost like a craving for, dang, I wish we can jump into this, because
Mm.
this is something that I can get with. But that crowd, and no disrespect to anybody at the table, not only were they not prepared for that, they didn't go there for that. And that's the sad thing, that we can't have uncomfortable conversations unless people have to intentionally put themselves in that space. Like our racial healing reflection circles through the therapist now are open to clinicians. It's a 7-week intensive on racial healing, but they got to come for it. They got to look for it. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not so. It's
Yeah.
sad that we have to look for those types of spaces, but that's just the reality. People don't want to be uncomfortable.
So then what it, because it is what it is, I'm going to have very little diversity at my conference because I run in circles like this, and it is what it has been. And I guess I'm embarrassed to even like make eye contact with you right now saying that because I feel I feel bad. And what can I do when we don't have a very diverse group there to
Yeah,
not in the inviting stage, because the inviting stage I have some ideas, but in the session when we don't have a representation of it, calling
yeah,
that out.
yeah. Practice in politeness,
Okay.
practice irreverence, and I'll send you a sidebar on what Naomi meant by irreverence, right? But calling it out right then and there, like if you're gonna. So what I hear you say is, I'm gonna be at the dinner table, Jay, with other people that look like me. What
Yeah.
kind of conversation can I have about racism? You can have such an open conversation, in my opinion,
Mhm.
about racism, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And so therefore helping people understand this is not a shame freeze. This is not, I'm not trying to, we're not trying to freeze you into shame. But why is it that we're not diverse? What is it about this space? And like calling out those
Yeah.
helping people to unlearn. I love unlearning. Scott, I love unlearning. I love unlearning. I think that is such a huge thing when it comes to racism. And so maybe even having a session on that. And people may get up and walk out, but
Hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
somebody's got to be uncomfortable.
Uh, yeah. Yeah. God, if we get to
So
choose
does
it.
that I know, right? Like I'm gonna be uncomfortable on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm gonna be in my own
Uh, well,
whatever.
every time we speak out as white people, you saying this to me, of course, I've never experienced what you've experienced. So I didn't even think about the idea of like, you can't choose it because you can't escape being in your black skin, whereas I can choose it all the time. And that is, I haven't even like digested that whole thought ever before. And that's going to, I don't know where that's going to take me. And so it's like when we do it, like what, once every 5 months, when we call out someone who says something racist and we're like,
Yeah.
good job.
I'm
Like,
anti-racist. Jay will
yeah,
be proud of me. Yeah, whatever. It's like, yeah, live it to the point where you get sick sometimes because you get sick of having to deal with it.
yeah.
Um, that would be a thing.
Wow. Is so much food for thought. I'm worried that I can't upload this to YouTube because it's too long. So we're gonna stop here. That was so valuable, and I thank you for your lack of shaming me for being in a system that I didn't wake up to early enough, and for helping me with that and helping the viewers. Thank you, Scott, for being here. Hi, Louise from AQI,
Yeah.
Danielle, well,
Hey, yeah.
hey guys. Um,
No, I'm so glad you invited me, and this was so much. I was super nervous about it, but I was super pumped because I know this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart for obvious reasons. I will leave us with this in the words of the great counselor Will Smith, Facebook counselor. He says, "It may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility."
ooh.
So yeah. So it is all of our responsibilities to eradicate racism, even if
Mm.
it wasn't our fault.
I think we could have said only that statement and probably would have summarized all of those silly questions that I had. That was amazing.
No, this was good. All right, my friend, let this not be the last
No?
time that we hang out.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. See you later, JJ.
All right. Later. Bye. How do I log out of this?